Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah and in this episode, we sit down with Francis Menotti. I'm super excited to share this episode because Francis Menotti is an incredibly creative magician. He performs lots, he creates lots, and if you've ever seen him perform or lecture, you know how unique his magic is, how much it stands out, and that's exactly why I was so excited to interview him, and he totally delivered. He shares with us how magic makes its way into his show, how he discovers new material, and he even gives us some games that we can play, one inside of quarantine and one outside of quarantine, to help us get better at our magic. Literally get better at magic, games to help you get better at magic, and he shares that with us. He also goes behind the scenes and advises us about how he advises people on television, how he performs on television. He talks about how things have changed creatively working with his wife, with the new duo act couple of magicians. We talk about virtual shows. We talk about so much. He was such a pleasure to have on, and I think you're going to love the episode as much as I did. Here it is, a wonderful time with the one and only Francis Menotti. Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and we are here with the one and only Francis Menotti. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. Let's go all the way back. How did you get started in magic? How did you find magic?
So the real truth is I started with a Fisher-Price magic set. As a kid, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is fun. But I think what's interesting is a lot of people, when they first find out that magic is not real, when you can't really do things like Harry Potter, they get disappointed. And for me, or at least as a kid, and for me, it was the opposite. I found out that I could do things that were pretend, but people believed. And I thought, this is the coolest thing in the world. So I actually embraced the deviousness of it pretty early on. So then through high school, I started doing birthday parties and that kind of thing. The normal, like a lot of people do. Well, you said you had Randy Shine on recently. He was a buddy of mine from Penn State. And he and I and three or four others started the first magic club at Penn State. While it sounds like fun, it ended up being what really planted the seeds of many of us going full time, or at least making a big dent life-wise into the magic community.
What did you go to school for?
I went to school for public relations and advertising, which and I had a minor in psychology. I never really got into acting, but I took a lot of theater, which influenced how I present performances and how I study magic from the art form perspective as opposed to the craft perspective. Well, both really. While I was studying advertising, PR, we started learning about journalism. And at that time, the internet was first becoming widely known. When I was taking these early journalism classes and PR stuff, they were talking about where that was going. They said, it's going to be going more towards entertainment. It was going like more not a reliable, not like outright saying they're not going to be a news source so much as an entertainment thing. And it was the pre-birth of things like Fox News, MSNBC, and all the stuff that everyone looks at as the slanted media and everything. And I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Like at that time, it was like, this is not looking fun. Magic, entertainment, speaking, doing that sort of thing sounds a lot more ethical and well within my what I could see myself doing. So it was just funny because like a few years later, when you start seeing all this happen, I'm like, wow. First off, the fact that it was so predictable is scary. Secondly, to see it happen, I'm happier now than ever being still getting to put out information and affect people worldwide, but in hopefully a little bit more of an ethical way.
So talk to me about kind of those first few months, because I remember what it was like for me. I also graduated school and went right into magic. I know you did some like birthday parties or parties, when you were younger, when you were like, okay, I've graduated school. It's now time for me to be a professional magician, put on my magician boots or I guess top hat, like how did you start getting that done?
So when I got my degree, I said, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. But I didn't have any prospects. I didn't know what to do. I knew my friend Randy lived in Philly, and I knew another friend had started an entertainment company, like for private events and birthdays and stuff like that. And all I knew is I wanted to make my living doing magic, right? Moved to Philly, it's a big city, bigger city at least. Got a temp job unrelated to my degree. And that was intentional, so I would not I didn't want to like it or be good at it in such a way that was like, oh yeah, this is just continuing school. I didn't want to get a job at an ad agency or anything like that because I didn't want to get comfortable and fall into that. So instead I got a temp job just doing a little nothing stuff for like keeping track of pagers and cell phones for the local electric company. So the day I got hired for that, which was in early to mid-February of 2000, I secretly set myself a goal of an end date of mid-June. And I did. I got the job, went through 2 weeks before that end date in my calendar. I gave them my 2-week notice, and I walked out the door. And the next day, I was driving across the Ben Franklin Bridge into New Jersey with the windows down, and it was a beautiful sunny day. And 24 hours earlier, I had been sitting in a cubicle. And that first summer, I worked so hard and so many hours doing everything. I did costume character stuff. I did balloon twisting. I did magic shows for terrible birthday party little brats and glorified babysitting. I did all of that. All this stuff that was just literally anything I could do to pay bills that was at least related on some level to magic career and interests. So I don't regret a moment of it. I don't regret anything because regret involves looking back at the past, and the past is just I can't change it, so I'm just going to keep moving forward.
One of the reasons why I was excited to bring you on, and I've been excited to chat with you about magic for a little while, because I saw you lecture, I saw you, a couple clips of you performing from Fool Us, and your magic is incredibly creative. It seems like there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and in magic, and one of the reasons this whole podcast exists, is to try to dig into that black box a little bit of any magician who is able to really put in the work and make an effect come out the other side looking different, special, looking their own, looking, like it's something unique. And, if the way I think about it is like this: if someone else saw it, they would say that's Francis's trick because it's built that kind of thing. So talk to us a little bit about that. How do you add kind of creativity or uniqueness to magic in a way that when it comes out the other side, it really is something different?
I can touch on a couple of things with it. First off, everyone has their own technique for finding their creative spark, right? For me, one of the things I do is I mean, it's important, I think, before you get to worrying about being creative and trying to do new stuff, to know the basics and do the classics and study good work of other good performers. And especially if there's published work of other good performers, try to do it exactly the way it is the first time. Before you say, oh, I'm going to create something, it's like me saying, I want to paint a portrait, but I've never picked up a paintbrush. Well, I should at least, that's why art classes have you practice painting the Mona Lisa. And there's the movie Finding Forrester that a friend and mentor constantly mentions. Rick Ma talks about a lot. And that is, there's a scene where he says, oh, if you can't write, then write this. And he hands him a manuscript of someone else's, and write it until they become your own words. That's kind of what it is with magic. Is I usually start with a premise, an idea that doesn't have any magic trick attached to it. It'll be something that's what if I had a coin that had only one side, a silver dollar, a half dollar that only had one side? What would that look like? And I'll imagine it, and I'll play with it, and I'll say, well, okay, that's magical. Now, how can I demonstrate this impossible concept through sleight of hand or with sleight of hand? And that's kind of what magic is always is to me. Magic is just allegory. It's a demonstration, physical demonstration of what can't be done. These ideas, like a one-sided coin, I turned that into a full routine that became an opening piece for me for strolling magic and my close-up act at the Magic Castle for years. It was like, that was the premise, and then I took it from there. Another technique I'll do, instead of just thinking of fun ideas, is I'll look at tricks that I don't like. I say that bluntly first, but let me elaborate. Like, we all have pieces of magic that are our little pet peeve magic tricks, right? Things that we'll see some other performer do, and it might be a completely irrational dislike for it. It might just be like the trick might be fine, but you just can't stand it. Like, oh, if I see the linking rings one more time, or if I see one more person do crazy man's handcuffs, it just drives me crazy. Well, so then that's fine to have these opinions and these, passionate likes or dislikes. But what can we do, especially with negativity? How can you harness negativity and turn it into something positive? This just got real like woo woo here, but but no, it's for real. Like, what can I do? All right, I don't like having this negative feeling about this trick. So what can I do to make this particular trick something that I would like watching? How can I change it so what I would like it? And if I can perform it in such a way that I would like it, well, then the audience is going to like it too, because what audiences like more than the skill or the technique or the effective performance of it is the passion that is exhibited by the performer. If the performer is having fun, the audience will have fun.
There's kind of two different options there. There's the idea of saying, here's what I wish to do and figuring out a way to do it. And there's also taking magic and kind of figuring out either what it is that you don't like about it, or just figuring out how to get excited and put your passion or passions into it so that that can be picked up on by the audience. Is that something that you would or used to do? You would find an effect and then say like, okay, what do I love that I can talk about with this? Or would you say, what do I hate about this? Or how do you move the needle when you've got an effect that you're like, I want to do this for some reason? Like what kind of things does that entail?
For a long time, I think I started with the trick that I didn't like and said, how can I make this something I'd like? So the egg bag, for example, I had seen some great egg bag routines. Obviously, Jeff Hobson did an amazing one, and Johnny Thompson's was unparalleled. And there's plenty of people that have done things with it that are really interesting. But by and large, I was like, why do I care about putting an egg in a bag? It disappears. And then why is it coming back? And just why? And not like deep philosophical whys, but like, why should I care?
Yeah,
right. Yeah. I would play with an idea like, okay, what is the kicker on this? What is the story with it? Why is it a chicken and an egg story? Does the bag disappear instead of the egg? And then I realized that Eric DeCamps did the thing where the bag disappeared and reappeared inside the egg. So I was like, okay, well, that's another thing, is sometimes you independently create or independently think of an idea before seeing someone else do it. Can't do that. Someone else is doing it. I'll find my own trajectory. But the thing, it's interesting, is sometimes that's a sad thing to people. I never look at it as sad if I independently create an idea that someone else that I respect has done. To me, that's an honor. It's like, oh, cool. All right, that means I'm doing something on the right on the right path.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not my path, but now I know at least, okay, this is worth exploring more. Right. It's never never a negative.
If you came up with an idea for a trick and someone else published it however many years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is, does that make you say, yes, this is so exciting, I'm on the right path, but I still want to keep pushing this until it's something that no one else has ever done? Or do you go, score, I'm ready to perform this, and I'm so glad that someone else also does this? Like, are you being pushed to continue doing it just for the sake of new ground or ground which is your own?
It depends on just how similar the idea is. But generally, if it's super similar, I'll probably say, it's not really worth pursuing for me. Or is if it's super similar in technique, but also most importantly that it's published, then I'll probably say, okay, I won't watch it myself. I'll ask someone else who I trust to watch it and just tell me whether how similar it is to what I'm working on. And the reason is I'm split on this. I believe research and understanding what's out there and what has been done before is extremely important, but it's important at a specific time in the creative process. I don't believe in saying, I'm going to do an egg bag routine. Let me go and watch every egg bag routine that's ever been done so that I make sure I don't do those things. I don't do that. I don't think it doesn't work for me. And I would be incredulous to see it work for other people, because I feel like you're influencing. It's like an actor studying a part. Being able to separate yourself from what you've seen before is very difficult. So when I'm working on a new idea, like, I don't know, McDonald's Aces trick or something, like, even if it's an old trick, a classic trick, I won't look at what other people have done with it until I've worked it out myself. And then if I work out the first draft, then I will go back and see what's been done. What that does is it allows me to be flexible and breathe in the creativity, in the creative process, without influence of others. And then I'll go and say, okay, what's been done? And I'll see some techniques that it'll be better than what I have. And I'll say, oh, well, that's good. I can adapt that to this. And I'll see other techniques that I've created or a script idea or something, and I'll say, "Oh, okay, that hasn't been mine hasn't been done, but I think I can run with it." Or sometimes I'll say, "Oh, well, this is my idea is garbage. This is a way better way of doing it." But either way, no matter what, it's a process. So I've done my personal part first, then I've had the influence of the outside forces, and then I find that medium ground in between, right?
That's such a strong way to go about it. But I think this is a good opportunity to take a pause. And I've been on the hunt to gather for magicians different things that they can do to spend their time on that will move, kind of move the needle for them during this time. And whether those are things for their business or for themselves or, everything from literally backing up your computer all the way to creating a new script for a new trick or doing some new things. So you had some kind of activities or games that you do even during non-self-isolation times, but I think they would serve a lot right now. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, I'll tell you the one that I do that I've taught at lectures before that is for all times. They're both for all times, but this is unrelated to the self-isolation stuff. And to be honest, you'd have to. This is the thing that you'd need to get some magician friends together to do on a Zoom meeting or some sort of chat. The game is called Shift or Get Off the Pot. It's a game that is based on a few years ago. Another friend said was at a magic lecture with me and just kind of mentioned they're a non-magician, and they after the fact, after seeing a lot of magicians just hanging out and kind of showing each other tricks beforehand, they rather bluntly and borderline rudely were like, "Why is everyone doing the same thing? And why are some of these people that have been doing it for so long not as good as some of the younger folks?" And it wasn't like they weren't being mean, but they were just kind of saying, "I don't understand this world that is not my world." And I kind of look at it, I was like, one of the things we're not as good as doing, as magicians aren't good at doing, is encouraging each other to be better at what we do. I know we pay lip service to it, but there's not a lot of like, here, let me help you with this. And a quick aside story is a few years ago, Eric Jones and I worked over in China, in Shanghai. He got us hired to do this series of shows for a shopping mall, and it was fun, and it was a great experience. It was right over the holidays, specifically on Christmas Day was a big holiday for them. We were doing shows, and the first day we did shows, a magician locally showed up. The second day, 5 of them showed up. The third day, there was probably 15, and they all came and supported and hung out. And then afterwards, they took us out. We ate. We had a great time. But it was such an interesting camaraderie because everyone, all the magicians, would show each other tricks and moves, not to show off, but to help each other and teach each other. And if someone said, "Oh, that's really cool, can you show me?" the person who just did it would be like, "Yeah, sure, here, you do this." Just the most amazing sharing I've ever seen in a magic hangout session. It was just no ego, just showing, teaching, learning. I thought, man, that's fantastic. So why don't we do that as much, at least in the States and other parts of the world, and how can we do it? So this is the game. The game is called Shift or Get Off the Pot. And the idea is it's kind of like a Simon Says of magic. Let's get 10 friends together, and we choose a moderator for the Simon Says for this game. And suppose we make it card day, just for lack of a better idea. So it's playing cards day, which means we get whoever the best person, as objectively as we can say, that person is the Simon. He gets everyone in a live group. You get everyone to stand up over Skype, whatever. You just Zoom. You just have everyone honor system kind of thing. Everyone stands up, and Simon says, "Do a double turnover." Okay, and everyone tries to do it. Simon says, "Do a Charlier pass." Simon says, "Do a double undercut." Simon says, "Do a classic pass," and so forth. And the moderator will progressively get more difficult from their perspective, whatever they think more difficult is. And everyone is to do their best to do that move. When you get to a move that you can't do, you stop. And it's not that you've lost, but you are out of the game at that point. And what that's your new assignment, is to learn that move. So it's kind of randomized in the sense that the Simon of the game is choosing the move that you will now have to learn. But what it does is it also gives you a good sort of an accounting for what you have, an inventory of the tools in your box. What you do in a live situation is you look to your left or right and see who's doing the move successfully and then moving on past you and say, hey, cool, could you teach me that when we're done? Yeah. Or at least tell me how to find the move. And then what that does is it brings people together. It gives you a teacher-student moment. And the person who teaches you one thing is probably going to be able to learn something else from you. And also, as we've known for years, teaching something makes you better. It gives you a better understanding of it yourself. So all of these things are positives. And the funny thing is the only loser at the end of the game is the person who's left standing, because that means they didn't learn it.
Right? They know all the moves. Yeah. I love this game, Shift or Get Off the Pot. Two things come to mind. So the first is that this is a great game to play at conventions.
Absolutely.
When you're in a group and you guys are all, bored talking about stupid nonsense, like, do this, point to the person who you think the best is and just, play around of this. But the other thing is, and just to maybe touch back on self-isolation time, Zoom has a feature to do breakout rooms, which means you are put in a room with just one other person. And so if you're in a group of 20 or something, the host presses a few buttons and now it's 10 groups of 2. So there might be a really cool way to play this game with a bunch of magicians and hop on, and then you get to be paired with someone who maybe knows the thing that you didn't, or whatever it is. So there are definitely some cool ways to do this and to play this game. And I love the idea of game playing. It kind of reminds me of all these stories that circulate in Magic of Tamariz challenging someone to do something, and then they end up figuring out a way to do it. It kind of reminds me of that. It's just figuring out a way to just play with things and do things that you haven't, and just push the boundaries.
Right.
Get out of the habits that we get into in our Magic, the thinking habits, the everything.
You said so many things right there that were really interesting and a good tag on to the game. It made me realize where some of this came from. Like the game I've been playing and teaching for a few years now, but it really comes back to when we had that university club. What made us all love Magic even more and most of us ended up becoming full-time performers, or at least, significantly performing a lot, was challenging each other. And not in like competition ways, but just saying, okay, you can't do a Pharaoh shuffle. I want you to be able to give me a Pharaoh shuffle by the end of the week. Making them assignments. And there wasn't really consequences of not getting things done, except for the encouragement and ego and disappointment if someone didn't do a thing. And so if you did that, and I like this idea of the breakout rooms in Zoom. I kind of knew about them, but I haven't explored them. But one of the other things you could do is something I've never really structured, but suppose you get 10 people together and we say, let's take a classic trick or a classic premise. You guys each get 10 minutes to come up with a new presentation idea for it. And I'm not talking the trick. I don't care about whether you can do the moves or not. I don't care if you can, it could be a center dealing routine where you don't know how to do it, but I want you to tell me a good presentation. If you could do this, what would be interesting to watch? And if you have 10 minutes to come up with something, and almost all of it's going to be garbage, and that's fine. And that's totally fine, because somewhere in there, in each of those little group presentation sessions, is going to be a seed of an idea. And that seed of an idea will blossom into something that becomes like a really powerful piece. During this quarantine time, my wife and I, who perform together in real life, are also doing so now. But we've been coming up with new pieces for some of the things that we're doing live. And some of them are like, okay, and we'll figure it out later. But we've come up with a couple of gems that immediately we need to expand on this. We're writing on it. We're working on new ideas for it so that when we can take it to a live stage, it'll definitely be in the full show. And it's just forced creativity sometimes. You won't find gold, but you'll find something better than gold, and that's the inspiration to find more.
Yeah, anything that gets you just digging around and digging in and enjoying that time is super, super valuable. And I know there's also another game that you do with Magic books.
One of the things, and this doesn't have to be books, because I know not everyone likes learning from books as much as videos or whatever. I would advocate, if you're not comfortable with learning from books, try it as far as for your creativity purposes, because as you said before, sometimes after a while, everyone starts to look the same if they're just copying whatever they see someone else do. And books make you learn wrong and differently in a good way, in a sense of like, oh, you're going to end up doing something differently than anyone else is. But to the game, I don't have a name for this because it's something I only started teaching recently.
The book game.
Yeah, the book game. And maybe it's the book randomized book quiz instead of test or something. But yeah, and what it is you look at your library. We all have a magic library, and it maybe if you're a beginner, it's only a couple books, a few things, whatever. It doesn't matter. But let's just say, for someone who's been doing it for a while, you have, I'm going to say 300 books, okay? So you have 300 books in your library of magic. Now, you need to know the order of them. I mean, they have to be organized, so it's like 1 through 300, just so you can label each one, right? You now use a random number generator, and it can be your iPhone or some 20-sided dice or whatever you want, right? So you say, give me a number between 1 and 300. So you say, hey, Siri, name a number between 1 and 300. And you take that number, suppose it's 172, and you go to book number 172. Let's say there are 200 pages in that book. Say, Siri, give me a number between 1 and 200. And she says, page 10, or number 10. So guess what? Now open to number 10, to page 10, and you go to the beginning of whatever that trick or essay is on that page. If you have to go back a couple pages, whatever, and you learn it. Or if it's an essay, you read it and devour it and study it and process it. But either way, you take the information randomized and you force yourself to go, like back in university days, college, high school, whatever school you would go to, your teacher gave you an assignment, and sometimes that assignment sucked. And sometimes it was great. But either way, there was a reason for it. And in this case, the reason is structured learning. I defy someone to show me a magician who's out there who's read every book they own cover to cover. I'm sure there's someone out there who's done it, but I love to put a general statement out. I'm going to go out on a limb and say pretty much most, if not all of us, have a handful of books, if not most of the books in our library that we've never even opened. So this is forcing yourself to have the time to at least show your books or videos a little more respect by going and watching the things. And guess what? You're going to find yourself addicted to the game, but you're also going to read past that chapter probably.
And have you found yourself doing one of those tricks that you ended up randomly landing yourself on?
I have. There's a couple of them. One is from Max Maven's Focus, I believe it was, which is I think it's just a book of some card pieces, and not all of them. In fact, I don't know if any of them are mentalism. Some of them are, but the one piece is actually just a straight up card trick that it's not like some of my, it doesn't fit into the A material, going to do this the first time to impress someone, but it's strong enough that it fits within the repertoire with a couple of other pieces. There's another piece by Derek Dingle that I started this game by going through the classic works or collected works of Derek Dingle and Richard Kaufman. And I started this was a few years ago when I was working on consulting on the TV show Deception, to keep my creativity going and my brain sane during the crazy hours when you work on a network show. I forced myself every day at lunch to learn a new trick. Not to learn, but to read through. And so I made myself go through the classic works of Derek Dingle again, or collected works. One piece stuck out to me. It's early on in the book. I don't remember what it's called, but yeah, it's from that kind of thing, like forced creativity. I started playing with it and I was like, this is a cool piece. And then I created my own presentation for it. I'll probably end up doing it sometime in the next, few weeks when we do one of our live shows or something.
Not only is it something fun to play with your brain and help you step outside of the box and change your patterns of thinking, but it also literally is a free method, to find potentially new material that you can do for real people that doesn't involve, staring at your bookshelf and saying, oh, who would be the best? Just let Siri figure it out for you, and you don't have to worry about it.
And especially when you get into things like Tarbell or Greater Magic and stuff, then it's like, which I know, everyone's always into the newest, greatest thing, but as Denny Haney used to say, it's in Tarbell. Everything's in Tarbell. Just go check Tarbell. Because literally everything that you can possibly imagine magic-wise, some version of it has been done or explored as far as the technique goes in these books. And so that kind of just shaking up your toolbox and you're dusting the cobwebs off your creative brain is really helpful.
I want to change gears a bit and talk a bit more about putting together magic and putting together an act. And I wanted to use two words, which is artistic and unique. And those are two words. I mean, unique is something that really does pop up when I watch a lot of your performances, especially some of the things up on stage, which is the bulk of what I've seen. You seem to make a point about, I don't know, saying something interesting, provoking. You're not just doing the trick. It's something more. You're saying something more or doing something more. Do you want to touch a little bit on that? Or
I mean, I'm going to be a little sacrilegious to magic for a second here, but irreverence is part of my lectures as well. And that is, we as magicians can watch magic, read magic, breathe it, see it, talk it, do it forever, nonstop, all the time. Like we have a condition, we have magicitis. There's nothing wrong with that specifically, except when we fall into the trap of believing that everyone feels the same way. So to that end, while watching a good piece of magic, like an astounding piece of sleight of hand, is enjoyable probably by a majority of people, watching two becomes less enjoyable. Watching 5 and 10 and 20, and the more they watch, the less interesting it becomes to them, because like after they've seen it, they don't see the nuances or understand the nuances or the passion of why we love it as much as we do. And to that end, it's like people aren't watching anything for just the trick, the technique. If you watch a juggler and you don't see their face, if you just watch the arms move things and stuff, like that's cool for a minute, but then after a while, it's just like okay, well, cool. What's next? Let me flip the channel. And looking cool is not good enough. It's good enough to start, but it's not good enough to hold their attention forever, because especially in this day and age when we're inundated by stimuli all the time. So a magic trick isn't going to hold a person's attention forever. So my first question when I'm performing anything is, why should the audience care? And I have a workaround for that, and that is, well, the audience can care if I'm passionate about what I'm doing. If the performer is having fun, then the audience will have fun most of the time. These are blanket statements. Obviously, there's exception to the rules, but in general. So what does that mean when it comes to creating magic? Well, it means, first off, I have to find something that I can be not just good at, but really passionate about. Right? I need to be passionate about it. And for someone, that might be their technique, and that's cool. For me, it's partly technique, but it's also partly ideas and stories and things. Like I love short stories by different authors that have little twists in them, like Saki or Roald Dahl or O. Henry, Julio Cortázar. There's just tons. Jorge Borges is my favorite author. And I'll read these stories, and they'll be like little philosophical questions, Socratic ideas, things that like you thought you knew this, maybe you don't know this.
You put a lot of work for a long time into, writing magic and creating magic. And recently, I don't know how recently, but you started doing a duo act with your partner. Can you talk a little bit about how that's been going and maybe how the creativity process has changed a little bit?
My wife and I have performed together full time now. We met at a show a few years ago. We hit it off immediately and decided, well, let's start performing together and writing shows together. And eventually we started dating, and we are now married, and I had never performed with a partner before. Now, I've performed with friends who, we've done written shows and that sort of thing, but never like, this is my act now with this other person. I'm half of an act, and it's been a wild ride of creativity and change and figuring out how to navigate time and space and stage and character differently. It's very different when you're performing by yourself, but it's been the best experience for me. It's been boost my creativity by 1,000% in certain ways, because it's like, oh, well, now I've got this new challenge to try and do. We have to figure out how transitions work and what is our dichotomy on stage. So, and of course, we're both basically somewhat exaggerated versions of ourselves, but there's a lot to that. There's characters, a whirlwind, bring it on, let's try this, let's just take these risks on stage. And I'm wait, hold on, let's think about this. Straight man role for a little bit of it. So
talk to me a little bit about how that creative process is together and how it's really changed for you.
We think of things differently. Since she doesn't have quite the magic background, she's been doing magic for a few years now, but not like I've been doing it since I was a kid. A lot of times it's me helping her figure out how to physically do the things, or taking pieces that I've done and say, well, how about you take this and put your own spin on it? The hardest thing has been trying to figure out how to do pieces together, like pieces of magic that are well, and especially now in this self-isolation stuff, how to do things that we can work on together, but also present to an audience together. Since she's still working on, she's good at like reading people and doing the mentalism stuff, and really good at talking and getting better at the sleight of hand. But a lot of times I'm doing the heavy lifting with the sleight of hand stuff while she'll do the perform part. It's a challenge. But it's a fun challenge. And she challenges me every day because we're like, well, how about we try this? Can we do this? And my first reaction is no. I don't know how. No, how?
Right.
But I never really say no, because we never really there's no such thing as no in creative process. It's definitely the improv game or improv philosophy of yes and, and that goes back to working on TV stuff. Like there's never no. It's like, yes, there's a way of doing that, but it's time and budget constrained. So if you can understand those things, then we can do it. So we have been taking some pieces that I've done by myself for years and making them into 2-person pieces. And then we've taken some, like my Scrabble piece that I did for Penn and Teller. Funny enough, as soon as I did that, after Penn and Teller, I've done it for years. Did it years before I did Penn and Teller. When we added Lindsay into it, she's not just she's never an assistant with me. She's her own performer and she does her solo pieces, but she comes on and sort of takes over. And if you haven't seen that Penn and Teller piece, you can find it on my website or on YouTube. But it's me doing a Scrabble trick where I talk a lot with a lot of big words, and that was really to appeal to Teller's background as a Latin teacher, and also just to it was fun for me. That's why I did it. That said, it's a lot more appealing now because Lindsay comes out and I start talking, and she acts as my translator. She sort of rolls her eyes and says, oh, "All right, let me help you guys out. He talks too much," And so now I'll say, if you haven't noticed by now, I tend to talk a lot. And she says, you don't say. I just did. And then she'll be like, yeah, if you haven't noticed, he tends to think using a lot of large words makes him attractive to the audience. And we go this back and forth. Now it's funny to us because watching the audience, it becomes like watching a tennis match. Like I giggle every time I do this trick now with Lindsay, because I'll say, naturally, as this proprietary radio may be already perspicacious to you, while words may be diverting and pulchritudinous, they can, if overused, cognitively perturb, but also be a pleonastic and intellectual fartle to the auditor. And she'll just look at me and be like, and she'll just translate to them and be like, did you just say fartle? And watching the audience will start looking at her and then looking at me. They'll look at me and then look at her to translate. And it's funny. And they enjoy it a lot more because it humanizes this otherwise, pretentious trick.
Well, that's awesome. And it's great that you found ways to not only come up with new stuff, but also have some more fun with some of the stuff that you've been doing for a long time. I wanted to talk a little bit about television and some of the work that you did on Deception, and then we'll talk briefly about Fool Us. Do you want to tell us what is Deception? So
Deception was a show on ABC a few years ago. We did it as a pilot first, as you always do, but it was an idea that a friend of mine and another Hollywood exec or two came up with, buddy David Kwong. He's sort of my business partner when it comes to TV, film, and theater consulting. But he came to me, pitched this thing and said, we're going to try and do this crime drama comedy where a magician teams up with the FBI to try and solve crimes. And, so it's an outlandish, silly kind of, not silly, but it's like a lighthearted kind of idea. It's like no one's going to take this seriously. We all knew what it was. It wasn't like trying to be some high art kind of thing. It was supposed to be fun, nighttime TV show action. We really lucked out because the actor they got to play the magician, Cameron Black, and Cameron Black's twin brother, Jonathan Black, a wonderful actor named Jack Cutmore Scott. And Jack never had done really magic at all before, but he was an incredibly fast learner and incredibly passionate to learn as much as he could. He's an English actor now in the States, but he was really adept at picking up the nuance, not just a slight or two, but like really the nuances of performing as a magician. So my rule as a consultant for film, TV, and theater that I try to adhere to as much as possible is making everything organic and as real as possible. I don't want to use hand doubles if I can avoid it. And I want the magic to be practical as opposed to CGI if possible. Now, there's a lot of times when you just cannot do a thing practically. And it's not necessarily because the actor can't pull it off. It might just be for the
camera or whatever.
Yeah, well, the camera angles, the lighting, the time of day, but the number one currency of any of this stuff, of film and TV, is time.
Right.
And time wins every time. Will win every argument, and the line producer will be like, nope, don't have time. Some of the things that we had to do, we were trying to do practically, but they changed it on the day, and they said, we need you to do this digitally. We don't have time to do this. And like, for example, there was one time we were shooting under an overpass. We needed to do this shot where the trick happened. Take a cell phone, makes it float across to the other person. And I had designed and rigged up some stuff with thread and, figured out what it would look like and the lighting and all that. But because they had to shoot from one direction and show the trick, and then shoot from the other direction and show the trick, and then still, most importantly, get the dialogue, because, the magic in the show is going to be the least important of it, we had to come to terms and say, okay, well, you need to do this in post. So my rule with that very quickly became, look, I will then work with the actor to show him how it should look with sleight of hand, and with the visual effects expert to show him how it should look. So what do I do? Like, for example, this one trick we did earlier in the day in an office building, and he had to take his cell phone and let it float in between his hands. So what I did is I rigged it up a couple different ways. One was sort of a zombie method with a thumb tip holding the phone from behind, and another was with thread. And the thread loop way worked better as far as what they wanted it to look like. So I showed the actor, took a phone, tied invisible thread to it, did all the, gaffed it up, and had him demonstrate, showed him how to do it, and he practiced with the real phone. And then we showed the VisFX guy what it should look like with the real phone and the motions and all that stuff. So you see a slight bounce on, when the phone drops into the things that you can't fake, right? We showed all that and recorded it for the VisFX guy. In the moment when it came time to shooting, Jack took the phone, the prop phone, and dropped the phone. Like, he held it in between his hands and then he just dropped it on the floor, but mimed the actions of doing the same thing he'd been practicing. So he mimed through the actions of moving it with the thread and everything. And then in the VisFX guy took it and painted in a digital phone, but to do the exact motions that it would be if you were doing it with thread. So the end result looked as though it were done practically. Like, so if a magician's watching it, they'd be like, oh, I probably used invisible thread or this and that. And that's because we did until we didn't.
Right. Right.
And that was the goal. I wanted to, fortunately the directors and the producers were all by the third episode, this museum episode, which was absurd, and we came up with some really crazy stuff having to do with Pepper's Ghost and the Blue Room. They gave me free rein to play with this, and they were okay with me making it look as practical as possible, which is amazing. We managed to do that for that whole first season. Most of it for the whole first season.
It seems like a lot of fun to be able to brainstorm and create and, come up with solutions, even if sometimes, you have to resort to visual effects and things like that. Even if for the most part you don't, and just being able to block out all of these interesting magical moments.
Most importantly, working with an actor who was working with actors and crew who are really into it. At first, when you're working on a set of a show like that, at first the consultant is always looked at, and people are like, oh man, this day is going to go on forever now because there's a specialist coming in and it's different from the normal day to day. So the first rule I had anytime I'm working with that is I go and talk directly to the directors first, talk to the different department heads, and we bring them together and say, hey guys, just so you know, my name's Francis. I'm here to help with the show. First rule, I'm going to ruin magic for you. I apologize, because I tell them, look, I don't have time. You don't have time for us to hide the secrets, right? Yeah. I'm only going to expose the things we need to do here, but I'm not ashamed. We've got to do it. And then the second thing is, I know how time is important to you. You know how time is important to me. We are going to work together, and I'm going to get in and out. I'm going to stay out of your way, and I'm going to make everything as smooth as possible. And as soon as they hear that, and then after we shoot the first scene, it goes from, oh man, this sucks, this is going to take forever, to, oh, okay, cool, all right, we're good. And so, like, as much as being on your toes and coming up with solutions is really important, but having a sort of, for lack of a better term, bedside manner is vital for these things, because it's like communication is the number one most important trait. Active, effective, unifying communications is like the number one trait that a leader of any sort can have. Hence why it's important in film and TV.
I wanted to change gears and talk about another television show, which is Penn and Teller's Fool Us, even just briefly. But it was a really awesome act, a great performance. And what I liked most about it is that this is an act that you have or had been doing for a long time. This has been with you for quite a while. And it was just, I don't know, I had seen you do it. It was amazing. It was great to see you do it on the show. Is there any behind the scenes or story or anything about that show, any nugget that you can tell us that happened that we wouldn't have known otherwise from watching it?
I have been doing the trick for years. If you've ever seen the trick that I do, that where my words get shuffled up and then get back together again, the first piece of magic I really did for magicians, exquisitely shuffled, that is the inspiration for the script for the Scrabble trick. And the reason I say that is in that trick, my words get all mixed up and it's hard to understand technically. But if you just let go and listen to it and what the words wash over you, you can pay attention. You can understand what it is. The music, the words become the background music to the routine. And it's the same with the Scrabble trick, because with Scrabble, I created a script with a friend of mine who's a Latin teacher. He helped me write all the big words in such a way that it made sense. And I did this so that, again, even if you understand most or all of the words, it comes at you too fast to be able to really pick up on what's happening. So you have to just kind of go with the flow and listen and watch that way. And if you do, it becomes a fun and interesting, enjoyable piece. And that was the reason I had created it to begin with. I then sold it to Josh J. and Andy Gladwin with Vanishing Ink a few years ago. It took a while to get it prepared and built and made, and they made it really well. They did a great job. It's still available through vanishingink.com. But it took some time, and it was delayed a couple times. And finally, it was December of 2014 or January of 2015. Well, you got the notice that it was in, and right like at the same time as it was landing on a ship in LA, I got an email from the producers of Fool Us, and they said, "Hey, we're looking for this kind of act and that kind of act. Would you be interested in applying?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And then I was like, "Oh man, this is perfect. How about if I try and pitch Wordsmith, the Scrabble trick?" And so, because then I thought, well, if I do this and I do it on national TV, it suffices. It does two things. First off, it becomes a national TV commercial for this trick that we're launching. And if it fools them, fantastic. And if it doesn't, okay, it still gets national TV exposure, and then people can see it and see what it's all about. And no matter what, it was a win-win situation from the beginning. So I called Josh and Andy, and they were like, "Yeah, let's go for it. Sounds good. We'll hold it," because they were going to launch it before. We were going to launch it sometime like early spring. We said, let's just sit on it. I shot the thing. Fortunately, on the show, it did fool them because I added a little nugget to kind of
send them astray.
Yeah, exactly. And the way the trick works, something happened in the rehearsal that would have just been beautiful. I'm not going to say exactly what it was, but there's something where by luck, something can all line up and I don't have to do anything. And I can just turn the word around and show them, and it's correct. And if that had happened I would have literally just put the thing down and said, "Thank you very much." And I'm just like, it would have been perfect. I would have just I could have held my hand out for the trophy, because it wouldn't have. It was like me saying, "Hey, name a number between 1 and 2,000,"
right.
And I turn over the card, and just by luck, it happened there. So that happened in the rehearsal, and I was like, why did this have to happen now? It didn't happen on the actual. But that said, It was a really enjoyable experience. They treat everyone really well. They with respect, and the whole show is about respecting magic. It's not fooling them is such a side part of it. It's such a small part of it compared to showing the lay audience, good magic. And whether you fool them or not, having Penn sing praises of how cool whatever you just did is, that carries a lot more weight than a trophy, which is cool. I'm glad it fooled them, but still, all in all, it was a great experience.
Well, that's awesome, and it really is an amazing act, and glad that was able to be put on such a beautiful stage. And from talking about advising on TV shows to being on some of the biggest stages in Magic, let's talk about some of the interesting stage in Magic or stages in Magic that you're performing in right now, which is your living room.
Right.
There's a lot of virtual magic and things like that going on, and you've been one of the magicians, like you said, at this time, we all kind of want to look and hope for some sort of guru and some sort of person who knows the answers, but nobody knows the answers. We were all thrust into this at the same time. And you're one of the magicians who has found a way to start innovating in the virtual magic space. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but if we want to just talk a little bit about it now, what are you currently doing with virtual magic, and what's really working for you?
Lindsay and I literally came from working in doing something in Vegas right before this went down. And before we even came home, we were like, you know what, this is going to be a thing. This quarantine thing is going to take us out for a while. Let's jump in and start working on this stuff, a virtual show immediately. First thing is, I never really pay attention to or care what other people are doing in most things in life. Until after, like that, back to that creativity stuff, right? I do my thing first, and then I look around and see what else other people are doing. But I figured people would be doing virtual shows, and I figured that we'd have to figure out a way of monetizing it. There are no right or wrong answers to that part of it, and I can't tell you what is working monetarily on that yet, because we're still figuring that out. But there's some fun ideas that we've been trying and we've been pitching and seem to be going over well. I think what's more interesting is the fact that there's this really weird split. And it's not weird, because everything's controversial, but there are magicians who hate virtual magic and say it can't be done and it shouldn't be done. And then there are others who are like, oh no, I'm just going to do it all the time and I don't care and it's perfect and it should be done. And I just said this recently in an SAM lecture that I did with my buddy Randy Shine. There's no right or wrong answer of it. One of the things that I think is keeping us going is from my friend and mentor and good buddy from years now, Rick Ma, has said, whatever people need to do to get through this really difficult time of life, do it. As long as it's not hurting yourself, do it. And if it means sitting on the couch and eating Twinkies, great. If it means learning a new task or learning to play the violin, great. If it means doing a virtual show, great. Whatever it takes to keep your sanity and your health, do it. And I do believe that that's true and important. But there's no black and white thing. It's virtual magic is neither good nor bad. The people who are worried that it's going to ruin magic, magic will never be ruined. Magic is just like the earth will do better when humans are gone. Magic is not going to die out just because of a couple of bad possible blips on the radar. Now, the other side of it is you can always find good things to come from it. What I think a lot of people are missing the mark on it, except maybe starting to realize now, is humans aren't tuning into these magic shows to see magic shows. They're not tuning into a music show or Saturday Night Live or any of these. They're not watching them. They're watching them to see it, sure, to see the magic or to be impressed. The number one thing that's drawing people in right now is facial time, seeing other humans doing things in a real time, and not recorded, and not with that's the other thing, not just not recorded, but not this high production value thing. Yeah, the production value can't be people in a t-shirt and like with your wrinkled curtains and your junk and your trash on the floor and everything. That is a problem that's happening right now. But I see other people saying, oh, well, I wouldn't do this without a 3-camera shoot or with proper lighting and proper sound. Okay, well, you should do your best to do what you can, but the people watching at home are not looking for that right now. I think that's going to change. I think we're now starting to shift to the next phase. But for the first few weeks, it was people tuning in to see other humans doing stuff in a normal feeling fashion, like a relaxed fashion.
They want to interact. They want to be a part of something. They want to part
of something real and live.
Yeah, exactly. And it is, one of the things that was bouncing around in my head in the virtual shows is, what can we do to be different than YouTube? Right? Right. What can we do that is different than them watching a video of the most famous magician? What's better than turning on Justin Willman on Netflix? Like, not that I would be better, but how can I be what they want right now so that they can watch Justin Willman and then watch me?
Exactly. And that's what the thing is, that people are worried that the trick, in this case, just as always with a show, the trick is not the most important. The trick is the necessary part in a magic trick, because you're a magician, so you're supposed to do a trick. So obviously the bare minimum should be that the trick fools them and is done well. Okay, great. But that's step 1. So what's step 2, 3, 4? And the rest of those are being engaging, being personal, being real, being raw, that is way more. Everyone wants to feel like there's someone else out there that is on their level, that is feel like we need to associate with other people going through the same thing that we do. This is just everything, every part of life. To that end, that was what Lindsay and I immediately started doing. Like our act is Couple of Magicians. Live on stage in our development over the last couple of years, our focus has been the fact that we're a couple, we're in love, we're a little gross, we're like actually a little too cutesy for some, and I don't care. We don't, because that's right. Then you're not my audience if you don't like it. But that said, we are embracing the love for each other, our camaraderie, our creativity, our back and forth. We embrace that and are intentionally showing everyone, hey, this is us. This is how we live. This is the inside the actor's studio. We set up our house and we take a couple hours, like an hour and a half at least, to shift from what it was in the afternoon when we were having breakfast or brunch or, making masks or whatever. Lindsay's making a bunch of masks right now for people who need them. And we say, okay, time to set the set. And we put up a time-lapse video that is literally an hour and a half condensed into 30 seconds, 40 seconds of us turning this room, cleaning, mopping the floor, moving the table, putting up props, setting the lights, doing all this. And you watch this conversion into a pristine party set version of our house. Like if we were throwing a party like we used to back in the real days, we would have it look nice, right? So what we do is we show people the going from rags to riches look, and then that evening they're with us in our house, but a nice version of our house. Our house is always like kind of like a set anyway, because we have eclectic tastes and we like weird stuff. So we set the set and set the stage, and that's a huge part of the show. The show starts before the show. Then when the show happens, you're in our living room or dining room with us, and we take turns, and Lindsay does a cold open, or I do with a trick or a little monologue. We do a trick or two. Lindsay does a song on the guitar or the ukulele for some things coming up. I'll be doing something with her music-wise. And then we do another, like a finale trick, and it might be 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes at the most. Most of the time is us talking. Most of the time is us BSing with the camera and saying hi. And that's and interacting with people who are typing in comments, or when we have volunteers, we're not doing that through Zoom. So we're doing it through Facebook things. What we do is we handpick a couple of volunteers to call in, and they Skype in. And one of the things I did is I dressed a mic stand with a clothes hanger, and Lindsay put an outfit on it, and then we put a fake hand on a pole, so it looks like this. We put the mic stand with an iPad attachment, and now you have this image of this ridiculous image of a person with their hand out, but the iPad is a head, and like that's just fun. That's just the fun part of it. And then we do a trick, and there's some magic happening. Now, one of the biggest problems with this live magic stuff, I think, the one thing that I do agree with strongly on it, and we've had this a couple times now, because it's not just these Saturday shows I'll tell you about in a second, but it's what happens when it gets screwed up. Because, something flashes, or like this past Saturday, we had a couple of issues. We've been on very little sleep because of some personal life stuff that happened, due to the COVID things. But, like always in real life, the show goes on and we dealt with it. But the show on Saturday was rough. I was droppy. Things happened. Something flashed that I didn't really like. And so what did we do? We took it down. As soon as the show was over, whoever was watching, they got to see it. That's fine. But then we took it down. We usually leave it up for like 12 hours or so if friends in Europe or the UK can see it. But there's a couple of reasons for this. First off, we don't want to keep anything that can go wrong up, but we also don't want the good stuff to stay up either. We want it to be an in-the-moment thing. Like back in the day, years ago, when television was like just a handful of networks, you had to tune in at 8 o'clock on Wednesdays to see MacGyver. You didn't even that was before VCRs or DVR or any of that. You had to watch it at that time, or you had to wait weeks for a rerun. And that kind of thing right now is like, it feels like a weird throwback. There's a psychological pleasure in that people get from saying, oh, it's time, we got to tune in. And it gives them that something to look forward to, something structured. They can watch it then, and then it's a magical sandcastle that melts away and it's gone forever. Now, we've been recording these and using them for some other promotional stuff that we're doing on 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 the side, the actual business side of things with this. But we've already, like, just before this call, from someone having seen our live shows, we got a company contact us saying, yeah, we're interested in something and talking. So we're in discussion with them right now, and it's a direct result of having done these shows. I'm not going to elaborate on that because that's, again, we're all still figuring the business side of it out. So this past Saturday, a couple things went wrong. I took the video down. Oh, well, no big deal. You have a bad show. You have, if you're doing a live show and you flash, you mess up, those people, if they saw it, great. I don't think non-magician, in fact, I know most of the non-magician friends of ours that watched it didn't see the things that went wrong because we were grilling them and they were like, was it this? You don't want to leave your bad stuff up, but also we don't want people to. But I'm hesitant to have a lot of video online anyway. So to that end, making this weekly thing. So we do the Saturday shows at 8:00, and it's only a short show, and there's some magic, there's some music, and it's mostly us interacting and having fun and giving people something to look forward to. But then the rest of the week on Sundays, I do a reading. We do this thing called Magic Story Time, and what that allows me to do is I read a book, chapters of Alice in Wonderland to kids in the audience, and funny enough, most of the response has been adults who love Alice in Wonderland. So, but I'll read it live, and then I'll do a trick in the middle and a trick at the end, and it's stuff that I'm confident enough to do, but might not be like, I might be trying to work out a new thing or testing it. It's kind of the stuff that I might do at a strolling in a restaurant, be like, let me try this out.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not brand new, never done before, that kind of stuff. I would not advocate doing that at all. But it's stuff that I'm like, all right, this is maybe 85% as opposed to the 95 to 100% that I want it. But the focus is on story time. And then we do that Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Lindsay does stories for like adults, some Roald Dahl or some Terry Pratchett, and just short stories and poems and stuff like that. And what that does is, it keeps us alive. Like, people see us, we're at the forefront of people, people remember us, and that's most important. And then secondly, it gives us something to do. It gives us something to think of, plan for. A couple of times we took a trick from that. We said, wow, this worked out so well. Let's add it to a Saturday show. And so I'll take it, tweak it, rewrite the script to make it better, and then put it in the formal show, right? And those pieces are the ones that we're really honing for the things like our corporate Zoom shows and our private, the other private show stuff that we're offering. So none of this is like rocket science, or if it is, I wouldn't take a ride anytime soon. But we're figuring it out, and most importantly, we're staying mostly sane.
It's good to hear that not only you're figuring out, but also, for me, one of the highlights that I've found with virtual magic is, I know it's not the same. I know it's all a little bit different, but if you start doing it, you realize that we're still giving people that same kind of gift and that same kind of moment and that same kind of special thing that they're searching for, and doing our jobs as artists and as magicians and entertainers. So thank you for doing that work. And performing and being on virtual and having some fun with people of the world who want to be a part of it. And yes, it is, although it's a different world now, like, you can book virtual gigs, you can do virtual shows, and you can do virtual magic.
A little tag onto that, and that is one of the things that I hear some people saying is, well, we're just going to wait until it comes back to normal. This is never going to go away. What we have now is going to evolve into something different. So virtual shows, while are not where they need to be. Like, we can't figure out exactly the right way of doing it. Technology is going to change and improve. And eventually, yes, even when we have things live again and go into live theater shows, this new world is now, people are aware of it. And there'll be companies and so forth requesting these kinds of things. We, as an entertainment industry, as magicians, need to figure out how to make it not bad,
Totally.
So it's like, we can't just pretend, we can't hide our heads in the sand and say, it's all going to go back to normal. No, it'll be a normal-ish kind of thing, but this isn't going to just disappear, because streaming shows have existed for much longer than this, and outside of magic, music and comedy and things like that. So we have to learn how to adapt.
I think we're seeing this all happen right now, and I agree with you. I think this is just the beginning, I think we're going to see a lot more of this come as as things change. And for a lot of magicians, they've been able to use this opportunity to become global. They might be doing shows for people in a different country when they might have just been doing people in the same city that they live in. So this is presenting a whole lot of opportunities for a whole lot of people. With that, we are getting towards the wrap-up part of the episode, where there are a few questions that we ask each magician, and then we find out where we can find them and find some of their material. So let's start with the first wrap-up question, which is the endless chain. In order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that absolutely must be on the show. So who's a magician who really, really would be great on this show and have a lot of valuable insights?
Have you had Mark D'Souza on?
No.
Okay, Mark would be great. Mark D'Souza is also in the Philadelphia area, but I can connect you with Mark, and he has a lot of knowledge and passion for magic. He's also been the I don't know if it still is, but the ethics chairman for the Society of American Magicians for years, and so really you'll find some really good information and insight from him.
Well, that is awesome. Thank you so much for that recommendation. The next question is about modern magic. So what is something about the world of magic going on right now that you like, and something going on in the world of magic right now that you don't like?
Let's see. I think the thing I like that's going on in magic right now is that magicians are taking more time to, and maybe it's because of the climate, the global climate, but they are taking a little more time to figure out performance ideas. I've seen some really clever video magic that's like isolation kind of things that are looking at things not from figuring out how to do live magic, watching that creativity happen, even though gold isn't always found, the process and seeing the ideas are really inspiring, along with the crossover between technology and live performance. There's some really interesting stuff with that is like finding that happy medium where the world knows that technology exists, and yet still convincing them that we're not using technology to accomplish our tricks, even if we still are. So navigating that is really fascinating, and I enjoy that. Something I don't like is something I don't like and haven't liked for a long time in magic, and it's unsettling to me a lot of times, and that is there's a cliquishness that always kind of existed, but it feels like it's gotten worse in the last few years. And I don't know if it's an internet thing, or if it's a political climate thing, or if it's what exactly is causing it. But there's this feeling of superiority between magicians that you sometimes see, or bad mouthing. There's just so much negativity that I see a lot of times. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying magic's great or magic's perfect, is that there's not bad magic, but there are ways of attacking and looking at and improving the things that we don't like, or the things that we can arguably say are bad for magic. There's a way of dealing with them that isn't personal and isn't attacking and is actually constructive.
The next thing is the take-home point. So people have been listening to us talk about magic for a little while now, and about many different areas. If people are to think back to this episode and remember one important thing, what would you like that one thing to be?
Keep moving forward, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't feel like we have to be right the first time you try something, whether it's the virtual magic or whether it's figuring out your performance character. Right now, especially right now, as everyone's facing this strange world and trying to figure out what's next, do what it takes to keep yourself moving forward, and with the hope and realization that you will have live audiences again, and that you're going to basically keep trying to improve yourself. And that's why I mentioned the games. Those games can be interactive and helpful for us. They've been helpful to me, and I look forward to hearing people's results. I would love for someone to send me a private message saying, "Hey, I did that exercise of the book. Here's a trick I learned. Can I show it to you?" And I would love to get a video of that, and see people's progress.
I have a hunch, from what I know about the Discourse in Magic audience, you're going to get a couple of emails. So
that's great.
I'd love for you to follow up and let us know who the first person is that does that, and maybe we have a special prize for them for doing that. Maybe, I don't know. Just a hunch, another hunch. And now, finally, plugs. Where can people find you, and where can people find your magic?
Well, the easiest way right now, where you'll find the most information, is on our Facebook page of Couple of Magicians. It's literally Facebook. You go to Facebook and go to Couple of Magicians page. It's like a fan page. So if people like and follow that, it helps us tremendously to produce new magic and to reach people, both magicians and non alike, and to promote the art of magic, because we also help promote other performers and shows and that sort of thing when we're not doing something. So there, you can also go to coupleofmagicians.com, which is the site that I have with Lindsay, and my personal direct site is francismenotti.com. Well, one last thing on those, since I'm mentioning websites and plugs, I'm making a specific website for the Discourse of Magic. It's basically, I don't do lots of, as right now I'm starting to do virtual lectures. So any magician clubs are interested, we can talk about the club lecture that I can do, a virtual club lecture through Zoom or whatever. I did one through the SAM with Randy Shine recently, and I made a splash page for products like my lecture notes and a couple other tricks that I have for sale. So if you're interested in those, the one that I made for this one is francismenotti.com/discourse. That's all it is. And you'll find a few tricks on there, some lecture notes, and a discount. I'll give you a discount for things if you're buying them directly from there. I don't, just to forewarn you, if you do go there, I'm not set up as a shop. I don't do this as this is such a side thing that it's not automated. So if you order something, I am personally going in and checking the email and shipping it out or sending you the ebook. So if you buy the ebook, it's not just going to show up in your computer immediately. I will respond to the email. So I apologize for that just ahead of time, but I'm not doing, we're doing this in the situation that it is now. That said, it's available and be happy to send you things.
That is awesome, and I think people should go check it out and see. You've got loads of different, not only great tricks, some that we spoke about, some that we haven't, but also great lecture notes and just great magic that people can do. So thank you so much for joining me on this episode and sharing a little bit about how you bring magic into, whether it's reality or virtual reality. Thank you so much for joining me. This was a real pleasure. And of course, a big thank you to everybody at home who listened and tuned in and joined us and hopefully learned a thing or two. As always, thanks for being here, and I'll see you next Thursday. Peace. Well, there you go. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As always, if something stuck out to you, if there was a moment, a message, an idea, please, please, please share it. Spread the word. Podcasts by nature aren't as shareable as YouTube videos or Instagram things or Facebook posts. They just don't share the same way. So if something stuck out to you, please take that extra second and share it. It really means the world. It is the only way that this thing grows. And trust me when I tell you that the podcast grows slowly from your word of mouth only. So please spread the word, share it, tell a friend. And I don't know if you knew, but the Discourse in Magic Facebook group is totally exploding. Not only are people getting feedback and ideas for tricks and for things they can do, moves, just awesome things going on there. But every Wednesday night, I'm doing something different on there. Sometimes it's a lecture, sometimes it's a jam, sometimes it's a business panel. It's always different. It's so much fun. It's free. Discourse in Magic Facebook group. There's a link to it in the description of this episode. Thanks for being here. As always, love you lots and see you next Thursday.